Hi, I'm Weston Doyle. My brother sent me a text at 2:47 a.m. Your wife chose me. You're such a loser, by the way. No apology, no explanation, just cold betrayal wrapped in mockery. She drained our savings. He moved into the apartment we were supposed to retire in. But I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I didn't break down. I smiled. Because some battles aren't won with fists or tears. They're won with patience, precision, and proof. When you're 10 steps ahead, when you've documented every lie, every theft, every manipulation, you don't need to shout, you just need to wait. Want to know how I buried them both without saying a word? How I turned their betrayal into their biggest mistake? Let me walk you through it. Every text, every receipt, every silent move that led to their downfall. This is how I won by staying calm. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. It was 2:47 a.m. when my phone lit up on the nightstand. I wasn't asleep, just lying there in the dark, staring at the ceiling fan, spinning lazy circles above me. The bedroom felt too big lately, too quiet, like the walls had started to notice she was gone more than I was. I reached for the phone without urgency. Probably a work email or some automated alert I'd forgotten to silence. But when I saw his name on the screen, my brother's name, something in my chest tightened before I even read the words. Your wife chose me. You're such a loser, by the way. Attached was a photo. The two of them at some beachside bar, her head tilted against his shoulder, his arm draped around her waist like they'd been together for years. She wore the turquoise sundress I'd bought her last summer for our anniversary. He wore that stupid smirk he'd perfected in high school, the one that said he'd gotten away with something and wanted you to know it. I read it 3 times. Not because I didn't understand it. Because I needed to let it settle. Needed to feel the full weight of what those words meant before I decided how to respond. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. Something colder moved through me, something sharper than anger, clarity. I typed one word back. Congratulations. No punctuation, no questions, just that. Then I set the phone face down on the nightstand, swung my legs out of bed and walked to the kitchen. The apartment was still. No hum from her laptop in the corner. No scent of her vanilla candles burning on the bookshelf. No sound of her footsteps padding across the hardwood at odd hours when she couldn't sleep. Just me and the low buzz of the refrigerator. I poured myself a glass of water, leaned against the counter, and stared out the window at the city lights below. We lived on the 8th floor of a building in Crescent Heights overlooking the financial district. She'd loved this view, said it made her feel like she was on top of the world. I wondered if she felt that way now, standing next to him. The anger would come later, I knew that. Right now, there was only the strange, hollow sensation of something breaking without sound. Like a bone fracturing under pressure but not snapping clean. You don't hear it. You just feel it shift. I walked back to the bedroom, sat down at the desk in the corner, and opened my laptop. The screen glowed blue in the darkness, casting long shadows across the room. First, I logged into our joint bank account. The one we'd opened together 3 years ago when we talked about buying a house someday, about building something permanent. I scrolled through the recent transactions, my eyes moving methodically down the list. $8, $200 withdrawn. Last Tuesday, ATM in Ocean View District. $3, $500 transferred. Last Friday, Venmo to an account I didn't recognize. $12, $400 withdrawn. Yesterday morning. Branch location in Harborview. I leaned back in the chair, fingers drumming once against the armrest. She'd been planning this. Not for days, for weeks. I opened a new tab and pulled up our shared credit card statements. Charges at boutique hotels, restaurants I'd never been to, a jewelry store in Twin Pines. Flowers delivered to an address I didn't recognize. Every purchase told a story. Every receipt was a sentence in a narrative she thought I'd never read. I didn't feel betrayed yet. I felt something stranger, like I was watching a movie I'd already seen but hadn't realized I was in. By 4:15 a.m., I'd changed every password. Bank accounts, streaming services, cloud storage, insurance portals. Every digital thread that connected us, I severed it. Quietly, methodically, no hesitation. Her access to the joint account, removed. Her name on the car insurance, deleted. The subscription to the meal kit service she loved, canceled. Lock after lock clicked shut, each one a small, silent victory. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it because it was necessary. Because the version of me that trusted her was gone now, and the version that remained understood that trust is a door, and once someone walks out, you don't leave it open behind them. Around 5:30 a.m. I walked into the closet. Her side was still full. Dresses hanging in neat rows, shoes lined up on the rack, scarves folded and stacked on the shelf. It looked like she'd just stepped out for the day, like she'd be back any moment to choose an outfit and complain about her hair. But she wasn't coming back. Not really. Even if she showed up at the door tomorrow, apologizing and crying and begging, the person I'd loved was already gone. What would return would be someone else, someone I didn't know, someone who'd looked me in the eye and lied for months while planning her exit. I grabbed a suitcase from the top shelf and started packing her things, not throwing them, not tearing them down in some emotional outburst, just folding them carefully, placing them inside, zipping it shut, reclaiming the space. By the time the sun started to rise, filtering pale orange light through the blinds, I'd filled 3 suitcases and stacked them by the door. Her makeup was gone from the bathroom. Her books were gone from the shelf. Her coffee mug, the one with the chipped handle she refused to throw away, sat alone on the kitchen counter. I picked it up, stared at it for a long moment, then placed it in the donation box I'd started in the hallway. That's when my phone buzzed again. I walked back to the bedroom and picked it up, a notification from the bank app. Declined transaction, Sapphire Lounge, Harborview. Amount, $940. 3 seconds later, another notification. Declined transaction, Oceanfront Resort, Twin Pines. Amount, $2, 100. Then another. Declined transaction, Lux Boutique, Crescent Heights. Amount, $680. I could see her face in my mind, confused at first, then annoyed, then maybe panicked. Pulling out card after card, each one coming back declined. Trying to laugh it off in front of him. Trying to play it cool, but feeling the ground shift under her feet. I sat down on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, and for the first time since I'd read his message, I smiled. Not a warm smile, not a happy one. Just the faint curve of satisfaction that comes when you realize you're not the one scrambling anymore. She'd taken my trust. She'd taken my money. She'd taken my brother, if you could even call him that anymore. But I'd taken back control. I set the phone down, walked to the window, and looked out at the city waking up below. People heading to work, starting their days, living their lives. Somewhere out there, she was realizing what she'd lost. Somewhere out there, he was realizing what he'd really won. And me, I was standing in the wreckage of something I'd built with my own hands, not crying, not breaking, just breathing. Because the worst had already happened. And somehow, I was still standing. The messages started coming in around 9 a.m. Not from her, not from him. From people who didn't even know what had happened yet. Hey man, you okay? Saw some weird posts online, call me. Dude, what's going on with you and Hannah? I ignored them all. I wasn't ready to explain, wasn't ready to perform the role of the heartbroken husband for an audience that would forget about it in a week anyway. Instead, I made coffee, toast, and sat down at the kitchen table with my laptop open in front of me. The apartment felt different now, lighter, maybe. Or just emptier in a way that didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was her. We need to talk. I stared at the message for a long moment, then set the phone aside without responding. There was nothing to talk about. She'd made her choice. She'd sent the message loud and clear when she emptied the accounts and ran off with my brother. But she wasn't done. Another message. You can't just lock me out of everything, that's illegal. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I opened a new document on my laptop and started typing. Not a response to her. A timeline. Every suspicious moment over the last 6 months. Every late night she'd claimed was a work event. Every weekend trip she'd taken alone. Every time she'd come home smelling like cologne that wasn't mine. March 14th. Said she was visiting her sister in Maplewood. Credit card statement shows hotel charge in Harborview same weekend my brother said he was at a conference. April 22nd. Anniversary of her father's passing. She wanted space to grieve alone. Bank records show dinner for 2 at Ember and Ash, upscale steakhouse. $340 total. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. May 30th. Girls, trip to the coast. Found a receipt in her jacket pocket later, 2 tickets to a jazz festival, both names printed, Hannah Clark and Cameron Steele. Cameron Steele. My brother. I kept typing, each entry another piece of a puzzle I hadn't realized I was solving until now. The picture was coming together, sharp and undeniable. This wasn't a sudden decision. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This was a plan, executed over months, funded with money I'd earned, carried out while I smiled and nodded, and believed her every word. By 11 a.m., I had 12 pages. Dates, locations, amounts, screenshots of text messages where she'd covered her tracks. I saved it all in a folder labeled Documentation, backed it up to 3 separate cloud services, and emailed a copy to myself. Then I called my lawyer. Trevor Negrian answered on the second ring. We'd gone to college together, stayed in touch over the years. He was one of those guys who never seemed rattled, no matter what you threw at him. "Weston," he said, voice calm and professional. "What's going on?" "I need to file for divorce," I said simply, "and I need to do it today." There was a pause. Not shock, just calculation. "Okay, can you come to my office in an hour?" "I'll be there in 30 minutes. I hung up, grabbed my keys, and walked out the door. The suitcases were still stacked in the hallway. I stepped over them without looking back. The drive to Trevor's office took 20 minutes. His firm was located in a sleek glass building downtown, the kind of place that smelled like expensive coffee and leather furniture. I rode the elevator to the 14th floor, walked past the reception desk, and found him waiting in his office, door already open. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. I sat. He leaned forward, fingers steepled in front of him. "Tell me everything." So I did. Not the emotional version, not the version where I painted myself as the victim. Just the facts. The timeline, the withdrawals, the text message, the photo. When I finished, he nodded slowly. "Do you have documentation?" I pulled out my phone, opened the email I'd sent myself, and forwarded it to him. 12 pages. Bank statements, credit card records, text message screenshots, receipts, everything. He scanned through it on his computer, eyes moving quickly across the screen. After a moment, he looked up. "This is good. Really good. You've got a clear pattern of financial misconduct and infidelity. California's a no-fault state, but this will matter when it comes to asset division." "What about the money she took?" I asked. "We'll file for reimbursement. She withdrew funds from a joint account without your knowledge or consent for personal use unrelated to marital expenses. That's actionable." I nodded. "How long will this take?" "If she cooperates, we can have initial paperwork filed by end of business today. If she fights, it could be a few months. But based on what you've shown me, I don't think she has much ground to stand on." "She won't cooperate," I said quietly. "She'll fight. That's who she is." Trevor leaned back in his chair. "Then we'll be ready." I left his office an hour later with a folder full of documents to sign, a court date already scheduled, and a strange sense of calm I hadn't expected to feel. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was just moving forward, one step at a time, like I was crossing a river and couldn't afford to look down at the current. On the drive home, my phone buzzed again, another message from her. "You're being childish, just talk to me." I pulled over into a coffee shop parking lot, stared at the message, and typed out a response. "I have nothing to say to you. My lawyer will be in touch." I hit send, then blocked her number. Then I blocked my brother's number. Then I blocked every mutual friend who might try to play mediator or convince me to hear her side. I didn't need to hear her side. I'd lived her side for 6 months while she lied to my face. When I got back to the apartment, the suitcases were gone. The hallway was empty. For a moment, I wondered if I'd imagined them, if this whole thing was some kind of fever dream I'd wake up from. But then I saw the note taped to the door. "Came by to get my things. We're not done talking. You owe me that much." I pulled the note off, crumpled it, and tossed it in the trash. She was right about one thing. We weren't done. But not because we needed to talk. Because I wasn't finished protecting myself yet. I walked inside, locked the door behind me, and sat down at my desk. Opened my laptop, started a new document. This one wasn't a timeline. It was a strategy. The next 72 hours were a blur of paperwork, phone calls, and careful documentation. I didn't sleep much. Didn't eat much either. Just moved from task to task like I was following a blueprint only I could see. First, I changed the locks. Called a locksmith Tuesday morning, had new deadbolts installed by noon. The old keys, the ones she still had somewhere, were useless now. I kept one of them, though. Dropped it in the desk drawer next to a small silver compass I'd carried since college. The compass had been a gift from my grandfather before he passed. He'd been a surveyor, spent his whole life measuring land, drawing boundaries, making sure people knew exactly where their property began and ended. Know your borders, he used to say, and protect them. I hadn't thought about that compass in years, but now, every time I opened the drawer, I saw it sitting there, needle pointing north, steady and sure. It became a reminder. Not of anger, of direction. Next, I went through every piece of paperwork in the apartment. Marriage certificate, tax returns, insurance policies, lease agreements. I made copies of everything, organized them into folders, labeled each one with dates and descriptions. I didn't know what I'd need yet, but I knew I'd rather have it and not need it than the other way around. Wednesday afternoon, I drove to the bank. Sat down with a manager, a woman in her 50s named Patricia, who'd helped us open the joint account 3 years ago. She remembered me. "Mr. Doyle," she said warmly. "How can I help you today?" "I need to close the joint account," I said, "and open a new one, just under my name." Her smile faded slightly. "Is everything all right?" "No," I said simply, "but it will be." She didn't ask questions. Just pulled up the account, walked me through the process. Transferred the remaining balance to a new account with new numbers, new passwords, new security questions. By the time I left, every financial tie between us was severed. That evening, I sat down with my laptop and started digging deeper. I pulled up our phone records, the ones I could still access through our shared family plan, scrolled through months of call logs, looking for patterns. There it was, hundreds of calls between her number and his, some lasting an hour or more, most of them late at night, after I'd gone to bed. A few during work hours, when she'd claimed to be in meetings. I exported the records, saved them as PDFs, added them to the growing folder of evidence I was building. Not because I wanted to hurt her, because I wanted to make sure no one could hurt me. Thursday morning, I received an email from Trevor. "Initial divorce filing submitted to the court. She's been served. Expect a response within 10 days. I read it twice, then closed the laptop and walked to the window, the city stretched out below, bustling and indifferent. People going about their lives, unaware of the quiet wars being fought in apartments and offices and courtrooms all around them. My phone rang. Unknown number. I debated letting it go to voicemail, but something told me to answer. "Hello?" "Weston." It was my mother's voice, tight and strained. "We need to talk about your brother." I closed my eyes. Of course she knew. Of course he'd already spun some version of the story that made him look like the victim. "What about him?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "He says you've been threatening him, harassing him. He's talking about getting a restraining order." I almost laughed. Almost. "Mom, I haven't spoken to him since he sent me that text. I haven't called, haven't messaged, haven't driven past his place. He's lying." "He showed me messages," she insisted. "Angry messages, from your number." My jaw tightened. "Forward them to me, right now." There was a pause. "What?" "Forward me the messages he claims I sent. I want to see them." Another pause, longer this time. "I don't know how to do that." "Then take a picture and text it to me." 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed. 3 screenshots. Messages that were crude, threatening, completely unlike anything I'd ever written. But they showed my name, my number, my profile picture. Except they weren't from me. I zoomed in on the timestamps. 2 of them were sent while I was in Trevor's office, my phone sitting on his desk while I signed paperwork. The 3rd was sent at 3 a.m. last night while I was asleep, phone charging on my nightstand. Someone had spoofed my number, created fake messages. Tried to build a case against me before I could build one against them. I forwarded the screenshots to Trevor with a single line. "He's trying to frame me!" His response came back in under a minute. "Document everything. Don't engage. Let me handle it." I set the phone down and walked to the kitchen. Poured a glass of water, stared at the compass sitting on the counter where I'd left it that morning. Know your borders. Protect them. They weren't just trying to take what was mine. They were trying to destroy my credibility, my reputation, my ability to defend myself. This wasn't just betrayal. This was warfare, and I was done playing defense. The knock came at 6:15 a.m. on Friday morning. 3 solid raps on the door, spaced evenly apart. The kind of knock that doesn't expect you to be asleep. I was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and my laptop open, reviewing the timeline I'd been building. When I heard it, something in my gut tightened, but I didn't panic. I'd been expecting this. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. 2 police officers stood on the other side, 1 male, 1 female, both in their 40s, both wearing expressions that gave nothing away. I unlocked the door and opened it halfway, keeping one hand on the frame. "Weston Doyle?" the male officer asked. "Yes. I'm Officer Richardson. This is Officer Kim. We'd like to ask you a few questions about a harassment complaint that was filed yesterday evening." I nodded slowly. "Of course. Would you like to come in?" They exchanged a glance, then stepped inside. I gestured toward the living room, but they remained standing near the door, hands resting casually near their belts. "Mr. Doyle," Officer Kim began, her voice measured and professional, "we received a report from a Cameron Steele claiming you've been sending threatening messages and making unwanted contact. He's provided screenshots and phone records. Can you tell us your side?" I'd rehearsed this moment in my head a dozen times since receiving those fake screenshots from my mother. I knew exactly what to say, exactly how to say it. "I haven't contacted my brother in any way since he sent me a text message 4 days ago informing me that he was involved with my wife. I responded with one word, 'Congratulations,' and I haven't reached out since. I have my phone records to prove it." Officer Richardson pulled out a small notepad. "Your brother claims you've sent multiple threatening messages over the past 3 days. He has screenshots showing messages from your number." "Those messages are fake," I said calmly. "Someone spoofed my number. I can prove I didn't send them." Officer Kim's eyebrow raised slightly. "How can you prove that?" I walked to the kitchen table, picked up my laptop, and brought it back to where they were standing. I opened the folder I'd prepared, pulled up my phone records from the carrier, and turned the screen toward them. Here are my official call and text logs from the past week, pulled directly from my service provider. You can see every message I sent, every call I made, with timestamps. None of them match the messages my brother is claiming I sent. They leaned in, studying the screen. I scrolled down, highlighting the relevant dates and times. The first threatening message he claims I sent was on Tuesday at 2:47 p.m. According to these records, I didn't send any texts at that time. I was actually at my lawyer's office filing for divorce. I have time-stamped documents and security camera footage from the building to confirm my location. Officer Richardson made a note. "And the other messages?" I pulled up the screenshots my mother had sent me. This one was supposedly sent at 3 a.m. Wednesday. My phone was on my nightstand, charging. I can provide my building's security logs, showing I didn't leave my apartment that night. More importantly, my phone's internal data shows no outgoing messages at that time. I opened another file. I also ran a reverse lookup on the metadata of these screenshots. The messages were created using a spoofing app not sent from an actual phone. The digital fingerprint doesn't match any device registered to me. Officer Kim crossed her arms, her posture shifting slightly. "You came prepared." "I had to," I said simply. "My brother and my wife emptied our joint bank account, left the state, and when I took legal action to protect myself, they tried to frame me. I'm not the aggressor here. I'm defending myself." Officer Richardson flipped through his notepad. "Do you have documentation of the financial misconduct you mentioned?" I closed the laptop and walked back to the kitchen table. I'd organized everything into a single binder, the same one I'd shown Trevor. Bank statements, credit card records, withdrawal receipts, text message logs, the prenuptial agreement I'd had the foresight to insist on before we got married. I handed it to Officer Richardson. "Everything's in here. Dates, amounts, locations. My lawyer has copies. The court has copies. I filed for divorce 3 days ago and requested reimbursement for the funds that were taken without my consent." He opened the binder and scanned the first few pages. Officer Kim looked over his shoulder, her expression unreadable. After a long moment, Officer Richardson closed the binder and handed it back to me. "Mr. Doyle, based on what you've shown us, it doesn't appear you've violated any harassment statutes. The messages in question don't originate from your devices, and you have a solid alibi for the times they were allegedly sent. We'll include this information in our report," Officer Kim added. If your brother continues to make false claims, you may want to consider filing a counter-report for harassment or defamation. I nodded. I'm already working with my attorney on that. They asked a few more clarifying questions, mostly procedural, then thanked me for my cooperation and left. I watched through the window as they walked back to their patrol car, spoke briefly to each other, then drove away. When the door closed behind them, I stood there for a long moment, the binder still in my hands. My heart was pounding now, adrenaline finally catching up to the calm exterior I'd maintained throughout the entire conversation. But I hadn't cracked, hadn't stumbled, hadn't given them any reason to doubt me. I walked back to the kitchen table and set the binder down next to the compass. The needle still pointed north, steady and unwavering. Around noon, my phone buzzed, a text from Trevor. Police report came back clean, no charges. Cameron's complaint is flagged as potentially fraudulent. Well done. I read it twice, then set the phone aside and made myself lunch. Turkey sandwich, apple slices, glass of water. I ate slowly, methodically, the same way I'd been handling everything else. By mid-afternoon, I received another email. This one from the court. Hannah had filed a response to the divorce petition. She was contesting the asset division, claiming I'd locked her out of marital funds without cause and demanding half of everything, including the apartment, the car, and the savings account I'd opened under my name alone. I forwarded the email to Trevor without comment. He called 10 minutes later. She's reaching, he said bluntly. None of this will hold up. The prenup is ironclad, and we have documentation showing she withdrew funds for personal use unrelated to marital expenses. This is a stall tactic. So what do we do? I asked. We file a countermotion. We present the evidence. We let the court see exactly what happened. And then we wait. How long? Could be a few weeks, could be a few months. Depends on how hard she wants to fight. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. She'll fight. That's all she knows how to do. Then we'll be ready, Trevor said. You've done everything right so far. Just keep doing what you're doing. Document everything. Don't engage. Let the system work. After we hung up, I walked to the window and looked out at the city. The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the buildings below. Somewhere out there, she was plotting her next move. Somewhere out there, my brother was probably doing the same. But I wasn't worried, because for every move they made, I was 3 steps ahead. For every lie they told, I had a document that proved the truth. For every attempt to paint me as the villain, I had evidence that showed exactly who they really were. I wasn't fighting with anger, I was fighting with facts. And facts don't lose. Saturday morning, I woke up to an email I wasn't expecting. The subject line read, "You need to see this." It was from Ethan Cross, an old college friend who worked in digital forensics. We'd kept in touch over the years, mostly through occasional messages and the rare meetup when he was in town. I hadn't told him what was going on, hadn't reached out for help, which made this email all the more strange. I opened it. Weston? I don't know if you're aware, but someone's been running a targeted smear campaign against you online. Fake social media accounts, fabricated reviews on your business page, posts claiming you're abusive and dangerous. I stumbled across it while doing routine work for a client and recognized your name. Thought you should know. Call me if you need help tracking the source. My jaw tightened. I clicked the link he'd attached. The first account was on a popular social media platform, created 6 days ago, under a fake name but using details that clearly pointed to me. Posts claiming I'd been controlling, manipulative, financially abusive. Comments from other fake accounts agreeing, sharing similar experiences, building a narrative that painted me as a monster. The second account was worse. It was on a professional networking site, using a slightly altered version of my name, posting inflammatory comments on industry forums, making me look unstable and unprofessional. The third was a review site, multiple 1-star reviews on the consulting firm I worked for, all posted within the last week, all claiming I'd mishandled projects, behaved inappropriately, couldn't be trusted. I sat back in my chair, phone in hand, and stared at the screen. This wasn't random. This wasn't someone acting out of anger or spite. This was calculated, deliberate, designed to destroy my reputation before I could defend myself. I called Ethan. He picked up on the second ring. Hey, man, you see what I sent? I did. Can you trace where these accounts are coming from? Already started. Give me a few hours. I'll send you what I find. 3 hours later, my phone buzzed with another email. Ethan had attached a detailed report, complete with IP addresses, timestamps, and device information. Every single fake account had been created from the same location, a coffee shop in Harborview, 3 blocks from where Cameron worked. The timestamps matched his typical lunch breaks. The device ID linked back to a laptop registered under his name. It was him, all of it. I forwarded the report to Trevor, then sat at my desk and started a new document. I titled it Digital Defamation Evidence Log. For the next several hours, I methodically screenshotted every fake post, every fabricated review, every malicious comment. I documented the account creation dates, the IP addresses, the patterns in language and timing. I cross-referenced them with Cameron's known schedule, his social media activity, his public check-ins at locations that matched the data Ethan had provided. By evening, I had a 40-page document, every lie, every fake account, every attempt to destroy my credibility, all traced back to him. But I wasn't done digging. I opened our old joint cloud storage account, the one Hannah and I had shared for years. She'd removed most of her files after she left, but she'd forgotten about the automatic backup feature I'd enabled years ago. Every deleted file was still recoverable for 30 days. I clicked through the backup folder. Photos, documents, random screenshots she'd saved and later deleted. Most of it was mundane, unimportant. But then I found a folder labeled Travel Plans. Inside were itineraries, hotel confirmations, flight bookings. Dozens of them, stretching back over a year. Trips she'd claimed were for work, for family visits, for time alone to clear her head. Every single one had been a lie. March trip to Silver Pine Resort. She'd told me it was a corporate retreat. The booking confirmation showed 2 guests, Hannah Clark and Cameron Steele. June weekend in Ocean View District. She'd said she was visiting her college roommate. The hotel reservation was under both their names. September getaway to Ridgewood Heights. A spa weekend with her sister, she'd claimed. The receipt showed a couple's massage package, champagne in the room, late checkout for 2. I kept scrolling, my chest tightening with each new file. It wasn't just months. It was over a year. Maybe longer. This wasn't an affair that started recently. This was a relationship she'd been hiding in plain sight while I worked late, paid the bills, and planned a future that didn't include me. I found another folder labeled New Start. Inside were apartment listings, all in Harborview, budget spreadsheets calculating rent, utilities, and monthly expenses. A draft email to a leasing company inquiring about move-in dates. The email was dated 4 months ago. She'd been planning to leave me for 4 months. She just hadn't told me yet. I closed the laptop and walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water. Stood at the counter, staring at the compass sitting next to my keys. This wasn't betrayal anymore. This was a long con. She'd used me as financial stability while building a life with someone else. She'd smiled at me over breakfast, kissed me goodnight, talked about plans for next summer, all while booking vacations with my brother and calculating how much money she'd need to leave me behind. My phone buzzed. Another message from Trevor. Just reviewed the digital forensics report. This is strong evidence. We can add defamation and harassment to our countermotion. Also, the cloud storage files you sent establish premeditation. Judge will see this wasn't a sudden decision. She planned this extensively. You're in a very strong position. I read the message 3 times, then set the phone down. I wasn't angry anymore. I was something else. Something colder, sharper. I'd spent the last week defending myself, protecting my assets, proving I wasn't the villain they wanted me to be. But now I understood the full scope of what they'd done. And it wasn't just about the money, or the lies, or even the betrayal. It was about the arrogance, the assumption that I'd never look, never question, never connect the dots. They thought I was weak, thought I was naive, thought I'd just roll over and accept whatever version of the story they decided to tell. They were wrong. I walked back to my desk, opened the laptop, and created a new folder. I labeled it Complete Record. Inside, I organized everything: the financial documents, the travel records, the fake social media accounts, the police report, the phone logs, the screenshots, the witness statements from friends who'd seen them together, the metadata from Ethan's forensic analysis. Every piece of evidence, every lie, every calculated move they'd made, all in one place. Time-stamped. Cross-referenced. Undeniable. I backed it up to 3 separate cloud services, emailed copies to Trevor and Ethan, and saved a physical copy on a flash drive that I locked in the fireproof safe under my desk. Then I leaned back in my chair and stared at the screen. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about making them suffer. It was about making sure that when this went to court, when the judge asked for evidence, when they tried to twist the narrative one more time, I had the truth. All of it. Documented, verified, impossible to deny. I thought about my grandfather again, about the compass he'd given me, the advice he'd shared. Know your borders, protect them. I'd spent my whole life being the nice guy, the one who trusted people, who gave second chances, who believed the best in everyone. And where had that gotten me? Betrayed, robbed, framed. But I wasn't that person anymore. The person I was now understood that trust is earned, not given, that silence is a strategy, not a weakness, that patience, preparation, and proof are more powerful than any amount of anger or shouting. I reached into the desk drawer and pulled out the compass, held it in my hand, watching the needle settle north. They'd thought I'd break, thought I'd crumble under the weight of their lies. Instead, I built a case, and it was airtight. Sunday afternoon, I was reorganizing the hall closet when I found it. A shoebox tucked behind winter coats I hadn't worn in years. Pushed so far back I'd forgotten it existed. I pulled it out, brushed off the dust, and sat down on the floor with it in my lap. The cardboard was worn at the edges, softened by time and handling. I knew what was inside before I even opened it. Letters. Dozens of them. Handwritten notes Hannah had given me over the years, back when we were still dating, back when everything felt possible and permanent. I lifted the lid slowly. The first one was written on lined notebook paper, folded into a careful square. I recognized it immediately. She'd slipped it into my backpack during our senior year of college, the week before finals, when I was drowning in stress and caffeine. I unfolded it and read, "You're gonna do amazing, you always do. I don't know how you stay so calm when everything around you is chaos, but that's what I love about you. You're my steady ground. Always. Love, H." My steady ground. I set it aside and picked up another. This one was from our first anniversary, written on fancy stationery she must have bought specifically for the occasion. 1 year down, forever to go. I know I'm not always easy to deal with. I know I ask too much sometimes. But you never make me feel like I'm too much. You just love me anyway. That's rare, Weston. You're rare. I'm so lucky I found you. I stared at those words for a long time. You're rare. I'm so lucky I found you. When had that changed? When had I stopped being rare and started being convenient? When had I stopped being her steady ground and started being her safety net while she built a life somewhere else? I kept reading, letter after letter, note after note, each one a snapshot of a version of her I didn't recognize anymore. Or maybe I did recognize her, and that was the problem. Maybe this version, the one who wrote about love and forever and luck, was the performance. Maybe the woman who drained bank accounts and booked secret vacations was who she'd been all along. There was one from the night I proposed. She'd written it the morning after, left it on the bathroom mirror for me to find. I can't believe you're going to be my husband. I keep saying it out loud just to hear how it sounds. My husband. I promise I'll be the kind of wife who makes you proud. Who supports you, who builds a life with you, not just next to you. I mean that, Weston. I really do. I folded that one carefully and placed it back in the box. My hands were steady, but something in my chest was fracturing in a way I couldn't name. Not anger, not even sadness, just a deep, aching realization that the person I'd loved, the person I'd built my entire adult life around, had never really existed. She'd been a story, a performance, a version of herself she'd tried on like a costume and worn just long enough to make me believe it was real. I thought about the trips she'd taken with Cameron, the hotel rooms, the champagne, the couple's massages. Had she written him letters too? Had she told him he was her steady ground? Or had she learned by then that words were just tools, things you used to get what you needed until you didn't need them anymore? I put the lid back on the box and stood up, walked to the kitchen, set it on the counter next to the compass. For a moment, I considered throwing it away, tossing it in the dumpster outside, letting it disappear with the rest of the lies. But something stopped me. Not sentimentality. Something else. Evidence. These letters were evidence too. Not of her love, but of her capacity to deceive. To write beautiful words while planning an exit. To promise forever while booking flights with someone else. I picked up my phone and took photos of each letter. Every page, every word, every promise she'd made and broken. Then I added them to the folder on my laptop, labeled Pattern of Deception. My phone buzzed. A message from my mother. Please talk to your brother. This has gone too far. Your family. I stared at the message, jaw tightening. Family. That word had meant something once. It meant showing up. It meant loyalty. It meant protecting each other, even when it was hard. But Cameron had redefined it. To him, family meant taking what he wanted and expecting me to forgive him because we shared the same last name. It meant betrayal without consequence, wrapped in the excuse of blood relation. I typed back slowly, deliberately. He stopped being my family the moment he decided my wife was his. Don't ask me to forgive what he hasn't even apologized for. I hit send, then muted her contact. I couldn't handle the guilt trips, the attempts to mediate, the pressure to be the bigger person. I'd been the bigger person my entire life. Look where it got me. That evening, I sat on the couch with a glass of whiskey I'd been saving for a special occasion. There was nothing special about tonight, but I poured it anyway. 2 fingers, neat. In a crystal glass Hannah had picked out at some home goods store years ago. I raised it to my lips, then paused. Stared at the amber liquid, catching the light from the lamp beside me. She'd told me once, years ago, that she loved how I never drank to excess, how I was always in control, always measured. She'd said it like it was a compliment, but now I wondered if it had been a criticism, if she'd found me boring even then, but just hadn't said it out loud yet. You're just boring. Those words had been rattling around in my head all week, surfacing at random moments. In the shower, in the car, while I was making coffee or folding laundry or staring at spreadsheets full of her lies. You're just boring. Not cruel, not mean. Just factual, like she was commenting on the weather. Or the color of the walls. Like my entire personality could be reduced to a single dismissive adjective, and that was enough to justify everything she'd done. I took a sip of the whiskey. It burned going down, sharp and clean. Maybe I was boring. Maybe I didn't take spontaneous trips or stay out until dawn or live like every day was an adventure. Maybe I paid bills on time and kept a budget and preferred quiet evenings to loud parties. But boring wasn't the same as unworthy. Boring wasn't the same as disposable. And it sure as hell wasn't permission to lie, steal, and destroy someone's life while pretending it was their fault for not being exciting enough. I finished the glass and set it down on the coffee table, leaned back against the couch and closed my eyes. For the first time since this started, I let myself feel it. Not the anger or the betrayal, but the loss. The weight of realizing that the last 5 years of my life had been built on a foundation that was never solid to begin with. That every plan we'd made, every conversation about the future, every moment I'd thought we were building something together, she'd been planning her exit. I'd loved her. Really loved her. The kind of love that makes you think about forever. That makes you work late so you can afford a nicer apartment, that makes you compromise and sacrifice because you believe it matters. But she hadn't loved me. Maybe she'd tried. Maybe at some point, in some version of the story, she'd believed her own performance. But whatever she'd felt, it hadn't been enough to stop her from taking everything and walking away without looking back. I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that used to feel peaceful, but now just felt empty. My phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from an unknown number. You think you're so smart. You think you've won. But this isn't over. You'll see. I read it twice, then took a screenshot and forwarded it to Trevor and Ethan. No response, no acknowledgement, just documentation. They could send all the threats they wanted. They could create more fake accounts, spread more lies, try every dirty trick they could think of. It didn't matter. Because I had something they didn't. The truth. And the truth didn't need to shout. It didn't need to threaten or manipulate or perform. It just needed to exist, documented and undeniable, waiting for the moment when it would matter most. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and picked up the compass, held it in my palm, feeling its weight, its certainty. Know your borders. Protect them. I'd spent the last week doing exactly that, drawing lines, building walls, defending what was mine. But now I understood something else my grandfather had been trying to teach me. It wasn't just about protection. It was about knowing who you were when everything else fell apart. It was about having a true north, something internal and unchanging, that no one else could take from you. Hannah had tried to rewrite who I was. Boring, unexciting, not enough. But those were her words, not mine. Her story, not my truth. I was methodical, patient, deliberate. I thought before I acted. I planned before I moved. And maybe that wasn't exciting, but it was effective. It was strong. It was me. I placed the compass back on the counter and walked to my desk, opened the laptop, pulled up the document I'd been working on, the complete record of everything they'd done. Tomorrow, I'd send an updated copy to Trevor. We'd file the counter motion, present the evidence, and let the legal system do what it was designed to do. But tonight, I just needed to sit with the realization that I'd survived the worst of it. The shock, the betrayal, the attempts to destroy me. I'd survived all of it, not by fighting fire with fire, but by building something stronger than their lies. A case, a defense, a version of the truth, so thorough, so documented, so irrefutable, that no amount of manipulation could tear it down. I saved the document, backed it up one more time, and closed the laptop. Then I walked to the window and looked out at the city lights stretching into the distance. Somewhere out there, they were probably planning their next move. Somewhere out there, they were probably convinced they still had the upper hand. Let them think that. I knew better. Monday morning started quietly, too quietly. The kind of calm that makes you check your phone every few minutes, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It dropped at 10:23 a.m. I was at work, sitting in my office at Sterling Consulting Group, reviewing a client proposal when my phone lit up with a call from Trevor. "We've got a problem," he said without preamble. I set down my pen. "What kind of problem?" "Hannah filed an emergency motion this morning. She's claiming you have assets hidden in offshore accounts and that you're planning to flee the country. She's asking the court to freeze everything and issue a travel restriction." I sat back in my chair, staring at the wall. "That's absurd. I don't have offshore accounts. I've never even left the country except for that trip to Canada 3 years ago." "I know, but she submitted what she claims as evidence. Bank statements from an account in the Cayman Islands with your name on it. Transfer records showing money being moved out of the country over the past 6 months." My jaw tightened. "Those are fake. They have to be." "I agree, but the court has to investigate. There's a hearing scheduled for Wednesday morning. We need to prove these documents are fabricated, and we need to do it fast." After we hung up, I sat in my office with the door closed, staring at my computer screen without really seeing it. This was escalation. This wasn't just smear campaigns and fake text messages anymore. This was an attempt to destroy my credibility in court, to paint me as a criminal before I could present my case. I called Ethan. "I need you to trace something," I said when he answered. "Hannah just submitted fake bank statements to the court claiming I have offshore accounts. I need to know where those documents came from and who created them." "Send me copies," he said. "I'll get started." Trevor forwarded the documents Hannah had submitted. I sent them to Ethan, then opened them myself and started analyzing. The statements looked legitimate at first glance. Official letterhead, account numbers, transaction histories. But the more I studied them, the more inconsistencies I found. The dates were formatted wrong, using a day-month-year system that Cayman banks don't typically use. The account number had too many digits. The routing codes didn't match any legitimate financial institution I could find. And the signature at the bottom of each page, supposedly mine, was slightly different from my actual signature. Close, but not exact. Whoever created these had done their homework, but they'd made mistakes. Small ones, but enough. By noon, Ethan called back. "Got something," he said. "The metadata on these PDFs shows they were created using consumer-grade editing software, not generated by an actual banking system. The creation date is last Friday, 3 days ago, and the IP address traces back to the same coffee shop in Harborview where Cameron created those fake social media accounts." "Can you testify to that in court?" I asked. "Already drafting the affidavit. I'll have it to Trevor by end of day." I thanked him and hung up, then sat back in my chair and closed my eyes. They were getting desperate. The fake text messages hadn't worked. The smear campaign hadn't worked. The harassment complaint hadn't worked. So now they were fabricating evidence of criminal activity, hoping it would stick long enough to damage my credibility. But they'd made a critical mistake. They'd gotten sloppy. Around 2 p.m., I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "You need to stop." I opened it carefully, already suspecting what I'd find. "This has gone far enough. You're destroying lives, tearing apart a family, all because you can't handle the fact that she didn't love you anymore. Drop the divorce, split everything 50-50, and we can all move on. If you don't, things are going to get much worse for you. This is your last warning." No signature, no name, but I knew who it was from. I forwarded it to Trevor and Ethan without responding. Then I took a screenshot, printed a copy, and added it to the physical file I kept in my office safe. By 4 p.m., Trevor called again. "The email you forwarded constitutes witness intimidation. We can use it to demonstrate a pattern of harassment and fabrication. I'm adding it to our counter motion." "Good," I said. "What about the hearing on Wednesday?" "We'll present Ethan's forensic analysis showing the documents are fake. We'll present your actual financial records proving you have no offshore accounts. And we'll present the email as evidence of their desperation. The judge will see through this. And if they don't?" There was a pause. "Then we appeal. But I don't think it'll come to that. Hannah's overplayed her hand. She's making claims she can't back up with legitimate evidence, and it's going to cost her." After work, I drove home in silence. No radio, no podcasts, just the hum of the engine and my own thoughts circling like vultures. When I got to the apartment, I found something taped to my door. A handwritten note, folded once, my name scrawled across the front in handwriting I recognized immediately. Cameron's. I pulled it off the door, unlocked the apartment, and stepped inside before unfolding it. "You always thought you were better than me, smarter, more successful, more deserving, but look at you now, alone, pathetic, clinging to a life that doesn't want you anymore. Hannah never loved you. She told me that from the beginning. You were just a placeholder, until something better came along. And now she's mine, and there's nothing you can do about it. Drop the case. Walk away. Or, I promise you, I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are." I read it 3 times, standing in the middle of my living room with the door still open behind me. Then I folded it carefully, placed it in a plastic evidence bag I'd started keeping in the kitchen drawer, and added it to the growing stack of documents on my desk. Every threat, every lie, every desperate attempt to intimidate me into silence, all of it documented, preserved, ready to be presented in court. I picked up my phone and took a photo of the note before sealing it, sent it to Trevor with a single message, hand-delivered threat, adding to evidence log. His response came back immediately. "This keeps getting better. They're building our case for us." I set the phone down and walked to the kitchen. Made myself dinner, nothing fancy, just pasta and vegetables. Ate at the table while reviewing my notes for Wednesday's hearing. Around 8 p.m. my phone rang. Another unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. 2 minutes later, the voicemail notification appeared. I played it on speaker. Heavy breathing at first, then Hannah's voice, shaky and raw. "I know what you're doing. I know you think you're going to win, that you're going to destroy us, but you don't understand what you're dealing with. Cameron and we're not backing down. We'll do whatever it takes. Whatever it takes, Weston. You should remember that." The message ended. I saved it, downloaded the audio file, and added it to the folder. Then I sat down at my desk and opened the document I'd been working on. The complete record. Every piece of evidence, every lie, every threat, every desperate move they'd made. I scrolled through it slowly, page after page of documentation. Financial records, travel logs, fake social media accounts, fabricated bank statements, threatening emails and notes and voicemails. They'd tried everything. Lies, manipulation, intimidation, fabrication. They'd thrown everything they had at me, hoping something would stick, hoping I'd break or back down or disappear. But I hadn't, and I wouldn't. Because I understood something they didn't. Desperation makes people reckless. It makes them take shortcuts, leave evidence, make mistakes. And every mistake they made gave me more ammunition. I wasn't fighting with emotion anymore. I wasn't fighting with anger or hurt or the need for revenge. I was fighting with patience, with preparation, with a level of strategic thinking they couldn't match because they'd never had to. They'd spent their whole lives getting what they wanted through charm and manipulation and force of personality. They'd never had to build a case, never had to think 3 moves ahead, never had to consider that actions have consequences and lies leave trails. But I had, and that made all the difference. I closed the laptop and walked to the window. The city was dark now, lights twinkling in buildings across the skyline. Somewhere out there, they were probably convinced they still had a chance. Probably telling themselves that if they just pushed hard enough, threatened loud enough, fabricated convincing enough evidence, they could win. They were wrong. I picked up the compass from the kitchen counter, held it in my palm, watching the needle settle north. Wednesday morning, I'd walk into that courtroom with 40 pounds of evidence, 3 expert witnesses, and a case so airtight they wouldn't know what hit them. And when it was over, when the judge saw through every lie they'd told, when the truth finally came to light in a way that couldn't be denied or manipulated or spun into another story, I wouldn't gloat. I wouldn't celebrate. I'd just walk out of that courtroom knowing I'd protected what was mine, my reputation, my assets, my truth. That was enough. That was everything. Wednesday morning arrived cold and gray, the kind of weather that matched the weight of what was about to happen. I woke up at 5:30 a.m., made coffee, and went through my morning routine with the same deliberate calm I'd maintained for the past 2 weeks. Shower, shave, navy suit, white shirt, simple tie. Nothing flashy, nothing that screamed anger or desperation. Just professional, composed, the visual embodiment of someone who had nothing to hide. By 7 a.m., I was in my car, driving toward the courthouse in downtown Crescent Heights. The leather briefcase on the passenger seat contained 3 copies of every document I'd compiled, organized into labeled sections with color-coded tabs. Bank records, phone logs, travel receipts, expert analyses, witness statements. The fake offshore account documents with Ethan's forensic breakdown showing exactly how they'd been fabricated. Everything. I arrived at the courthouse at 7:45 a.m., 15 minutes before I was supposed to meet Trevor. The building was already busy. People filing in and out. Lawyers in suits carrying briefcases. Families clustered together on benches, waiting for their cases to be called. I found Trevor in the lobby, standing near the security checkpoint, with 2 additional people I recognized from his firm, associates he'd brought to help manage the volume of evidence we were presenting. "Ready?" he asked when he saw me. "Ready," I said. We went through security, took the elevator to the 4th floor, and walked down the hallway to courtroom 4B. The hearing wasn't a full trial, just a preliminary motion hearing to address Hannah's emergency request to freeze my assets and restrict my travel. But it was important. What happened in the next 2 hours would set the tone for everything that followed. We entered the courtroom at 8:20 a.m. It was smaller than I'd expected, with rows of wooden benches, a judge's bench at the front, and 2 tables facing it. Trevor gestured toward the table on the right, and I sat down, placing my briefcase on the floor beside me. At 8:35 a.m., the door opened again, and Hannah walked in. I hadn't seen her in person since the night she'd left. She looked different. Thinner, maybe. Her hair was shorter, styled in a way I didn't recognize. She wore a dark dress and minimal makeup, the kind of understated look designed to convey vulnerability and victimhood. Behind her came her lawyer, a tall man in his 50s with silver hair and an expensive suit. And behind him, Cameron. My jaw tightened when I saw him, but I didn't look away. He met my eyes for just a second, then looked down at his phone, pretending I didn't exist. They sat at the table on the left. Hannah didn't look at me, but I could feel the tension radiating from her, the way she held herself too stiff, too controlled. She was nervous. Good. At exactly 9 a.m., the bailiff stood. All rise. The Honorable Judge Patricia Brennan presiding. We stood as the judge entered, a woman in her early 60s with sharp eyes and an expression that suggested she'd heard every lie and seen every trick in the book. She sat, we sat, and the hearing began. Hannah's lawyer spoke first. His voice was smooth, practiced, the kind of tone that tried to sound reasonable while making outrageous claims. "Your Honor, We filed this emergency motion because we have credible evidence that Mr. Doyle has been systematically hiding marital assets in offshore accounts and is preparing to flee the country to avoid financial obligations. We've submitted bank statements showing transfers of over $200,000 to an account in the Cayman Islands over the past 6 months. We believe he poses a flight risk and respectfully ask the court to freeze all accounts and restrict his travel until a full financial audit can be conducted. Judge Brennan glanced down at the documents in front of her, then looked up. Mr. Nguyen, your response? Trevor stood, calm and unhurried. Your Honor, the documents submitted by opposing counsel are completely fabricated. We have forensic evidence proving these so-called bank statements were created using consumer-grade editing software and do not originate from any legitimate financial institution. We also have Mr. Doyle's complete and verified financial records, which show no offshore accounts, no suspicious transfers, and no indication whatsoever of the behavior alleged. This motion is not based on credible evidence. It's based on desperation and an attempt to manipulate this court. The judge's eyebrow raised slightly. That's a serious accusation, Mr. Nguyen. Yes, Your Honor, and we have serious evidence to support it. Trevor gestured to one of his associates, who began distributing documents to the judge and opposing counsel. I watched Hannah's lawyer flip through the pages, his expression shifting from confidence to confusion to something close to alarm. Your Honor, Trevor continued, we're submitting a forensic analysis conducted by Ethan Cross, a certified digital forensics expert. His report clearly demonstrates that the documents in question were created on October 4th of this year using Adobe Acrobat's editing tools, not generated by a banking institution. The metadata shows they were created from an IP address traced to a public coffee shop in Harborview, the same location linked to previous harassment and defamation attempts against my client. Judge Brennan studied the documents carefully, her expression unreadable. Mr. Harrington, she said, addressing Hannah's lawyer, do you have any response to this analysis? Harrington cleared his throat. Your Honor, we obtained these documents in good faith from Miss Clark, who received them from a confidential source. We had no reason to believe they were anything other than legitimate. A confidential source, the judge repeated, her tone dry. And did you verify the authenticity of these documents before submitting them to this court? Harrington hesitated. We trusted our client's representation, Your Honor. I see. Judge Brennan set the documents down and looked directly at Hannah. Miss Clark, where did you obtain these bank statements? Hannah shifted in her seat. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, almost trembling. Someone sent them to me anonymously. I thought they were real. I thought Weston was hiding money. Someone sent them anonymously, the judge said. And you didn't think to verify them before making serious allegations in a legal proceeding? Hannah looked down. I was scared. I thought he was trying to leave me with nothing. Trevor stood again. Your Honor, if I may, we'd like to present additional evidence that demonstrates a pattern of fabrication and harassment directed at my client. Judge Brennan nodded. Proceed. For the next 40 minutes, Trevor systematically presented everything. The fake text messages Cameron had created, traced back to spoofing software. The fabricated social media accounts designed to destroy my reputation. The threatening emails and handwritten notes. The voicemail from Hannah explicitly threatening to do whatever it takes. Every piece of evidence, every lie, every desperate attempt to intimidate me into silence. I sat quietly the entire time, hands folded on the table in front of me, watching Hannah's face as each new piece of evidence was presented. She'd started out looking confident, almost defiant. But with each document Trevor submitted, with each expert analysis and time-stamped log, her expression crumbled. By the time Trevor finished, she looked pale, shaken, like someone watching a building collapse in slow motion. Judge Brennan sat back in her chair, studying the mountain of evidence in front of her. The courtroom was silent, except for the quiet hum of the ventilation system. Finally, she spoke. Miss Clark, I'm going to be very clear with you. What you've presented to this court today is not evidence, it's fabrication. Whether you created these documents yourself or someone created them on your behalf is irrelevant. You submitted them under oath, and that makes you responsible. This is not a minor procedural error. This is a serious abuse of the legal system, and I will not tolerate it in my courtroom. Hannah's lawyer started to stand. Your Honor, if we could just... Sit down, Mr. Harrington. The judge's voice was sharp. He sat. She turned her attention back to Hannah. Your emergency motion is denied. Not only are there no grounds to freeze Mr. Doyle's assets or restrict his travel, but I'm now seriously questioning every other allegation you've made in this case. I'm ordering a full investigation into the source of these fabricated documents. If it's determined that you knowingly submitted false evidence, you will face sanctions, possibly including perjury charges. Hannah's face went white. Judge Brennan looked at Trevor. Mr. Nguyen, does your client wish to pursue additional legal action based on the harassment and defamation documented here today? Yes, Your Honor. We'll be filing a separate motion for damages and requesting a restraining order against both Ms. Clark and Cameron Steele. I'll expect that filing by the end of the week. She gathered her papers. This hearing is adjourned. Ms. Clark, Mr. Harrington, I strongly suggest you reconsider your strategy going forward. This court does not look kindly on litigants who waste its time with fraudulent claims. She stood, and we stood. The bailiff called, "All rise," and Judge Brennan left the courtroom. The moment she was gone, Hannah turned to her lawyer, her voice rising. You said this would work. You said... Outside, Harrington said tersely, grabbing his briefcase. Not here. They hurried toward the door. Cameron followed, still not looking at me, his shoulders hunched like he was trying to make himself invisible. I watched them go, feeling nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, just the quiet certainty that I'd done exactly what I needed to do. Trevor turned to me. That went better than expected. How much better? The judge basically handed us the case. Hannah's credibility is destroyed. Any claims she makes from here on out will be viewed with extreme skepticism. And the judge all but confirmed she'll approve our counter-motion for damages. I nodded slowly. What happens next? We file the restraining order and the damages motion by Friday. We'll also request that the court expedite the divorce proceedings given the documented pattern of harassment and fraud. With any luck, you'll be legally separated within 60 days and fully divorced within 6 months. And the money she took? We'll get most of it back. The prenup is solid and the evidence of financial misconduct is overwhelming. She'll have to return what she took, probably with interest. We gathered our materials and walked out of the courtroom. As we stepped into the hallway, I saw them at the far end, near the elevators. Hannah was crying, Cameron had his arm around her, and Harrington was on his phone, probably already trying to figure out how to salvage the wreckage of their case. I didn't feel sorry for them, didn't feel vindicated either. I just felt tired, like I'd been holding my breath for 2 weeks and could finally exhale. Trevor and I took the stairs down, emerging into the lobby. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows, cutting sharp lines across the marble floor. You did good in there, Trevor said, staying calm, not reacting. That helped. I just told the truth, I said. That's all I've been doing this whole time. He smiled slightly. Most people can't do that when they're under this much pressure. They get emotional, say things they shouldn't, make themselves look worse. But you just stayed steady. Steady, that word again. The same word Hannah had written in those letters years ago, back when she'd pretended it was a compliment. We shook hands outside the courthouse, and I walked to my car. Sat in the driver's seat for a long moment, not starting the engine, just staring out the windshield at the parking garage around me. It was over. Not completely. There were still motions to file, and paperwork to process, and months of legal procedure ahead. But the hard part, the part where I had to defend myself against lies and fabrications and desperate attempts to destroy me, that was done. I'd walked into that courtroom with the truth, and the truth had been enough. I pulled the compass out of my pocket, the one I'd been carrying every day since this started, held it in my palm, watching the needle point north. Know your borders. Protect them. I'd done that, and now finally I could start thinking about what came next. Not rebuilding what I'd lost, but building something new. Something that was mine alone, untouched by lies or betrayal or the weight of someone else's choices. I started the car and drove home, the city passing by outside the window, indifferent and unchanging. And for the first time in 2 weeks, the silence in the car didn't feel heavy. It felt like peace. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.